Welcome to another Three Girls, One Catch Up. It's more like a quarterly catch up now. We've missed a few months. Sorry about that. But we will try to keep things condensed so that we are not taking up your time for 3 hours. So we will go through our usual categories of what we've been up to, decks we've been using, books we've been reading, etc. Wait, who is that? Matilda?
It's Matilda, yeah.
Oh, hi, Matilda. Matilda is joining us.
Yes. She's in a very needy mood and she would not stop harassing me. So I figured I would just give her a little
Absolutely. No, she missed us. Yes.
Yeah.
The Three Girls. So, okay. Actually, first up, the category is, as usual, tarot, right?
Yeah. Tarot and oracle decks, yeah.
Really has been a long time. And Heather is first to go. All right.
So I'm only going to talk about two because in December I used the This Might Hurt Tarot all month, and everybody's seen that 100 times at this point already. So I have a couple of new ones, which will make sense when you see the deck that I'm going to talk about. So in November, I used the Shadowscapes deck, which Julie very kindly sent me. So this is Julie's larger Czech modified version of this deck. And this is not new to me. I had this deck, the normal English, American, I don't know, version of this deck, and gave it away because I hardly ever used it. Because at the time I had it, I hadn't had eye surgery and I couldn't see it. And even after I'd had eye surgery, I'm still not convinced I would have been able to see it. So I gave it away and I did miss it, but I don't think I realized how much I love this deck and how much I missed it until I had it back. And now I'm just like, I love it. It's just so beautiful.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think in terms of artwork, it probably is the most beautiful deck that I own. And it's one of those ones where I like reading with it, but also I like just to get it out and look at it because it just is. There are cards in it that I'm like, I want to put that on my wall. And it's just, it reads well. It's got like, I don't know if you can see, but Julie has very kindly in gold pen put like the numbers and stuff. You can't really pick it up on this camera, but they're like six. So that says 6C. So it's 6 of cups. But it's such a well done deck that you don't necessarily need it anyway. It's quite intuitive as to which card is which. This is one of my favorite hermits. I love this hermit card.
It's so beautiful.
Adorable. So I used this for the whole of November. And then in January, I used a brand new deck to me because I got it for Christmas. It was the only deck I got for Christmas. And that is the Good Fortune Tarot, which was a gift from Sarah. So between the two of you, you're just keeping me stocked in tarot, which is never a bad problem to have. Get friends like these people. Right. And again, I used it for the whole month. I know Sarah talked about it when we talked about our favorite decks of the year. This may very well make it onto mine for 2025, spoiler alert, because it is, again, it's just such a beautiful deck. Again, it's like the art style is different, beautiful, but it's, you know, it's so RWS that it's really easy to just pick up straight out the gate without really having to think about it too much. I do like this linen cardstock. I am definitely coming around to this version of linen cardstock. I think it's, the cross hatching is not overly noticeable, and I've just thrown them everywhere. It also it shuffles really nicely, like it riffle shuffles really nicely and stuff, and it's just, yeah, I am really, really happy. And I'm using a different one for February, and then I think I might actually go back to this one in March because I didn't feel like a month was long enough to play around with it, because I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the guidebook, and I am using the guidebook quite intensively when I use the deck, which is unusual for me, but it's a really well written guidebook as well. So yeah, those are the two main decks that I used throughout the 3 months that I wanted to talk about.
Awesome. Very nice. So did you find that the larger shadowscapes did help with you being able to see?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot less of like this going on.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's like,
Yeah. Having to pick it up and put it to your face, and then it gets too close to your face, and you're like, no, that did not help.
Okay, so November, I worked with 3 decks together for most of the month. And so the first one was the Cat Tarot, which was like a recent Kickstarter. And they were pretty efficient at getting the deck to us.
yeah.
Yeah, this is, as the name would suggest, a Cat Tarot deck. And it's just a good time. I don't really have too much to say. It's an easy reader. Just a bunch of stinking cute cats like this guy right here. So even though there are a couple artists, like I did get used to just like the different, slightly different style of artwork. It wasn't too jarring. Like it's noticeable, and yet I didn't, as I was using the deck, I found that it actually didn't bother me.
I think they're close enough.
Yeah, that's why I think it's
Not
close
maybe,
enough.
yeah.
So even though I can tell they're slightly different styles, it's close enough. The color palette's consistent, and they're just they complement each other. So it's not glaring to me.
Yeah.
So
I've not actually used this deck. Have you used this deck yet, Sarah?
I have, yes. I used it in January, so I will be talking very briefly about it because Julie's already shown it. So
that was a good time.
Yeah.
It's hard to shuffle. Not gonna lie, I can't riffle shuffle it. I can't riffle shuffle it at all. So
is it because it's thick card or long card or
no, it's thick
thickness? Yeah,
it's like, and it's not super bendy.
yeah,
it's just a stiff. It's stiff, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I found it hard to shuffle too. Like it, and the cards aren't small. Like they're not in any kind of like, they're. I guess they're probably like a pretty normal tarot size.
They're tarot size,
yeah. I'm just looking at the box because I can see the box from here, and I'm like, yeah, they look. I mean, they're pretty the box is pretty standard size against the other boxes. I have had it out and looked at it when I got it, and then it's sat on my shelf since then. I do want to use it at some point, but I just never feel drawn to it, which is
that's fair. You got to be in the mood. So that was a good time, and then I actually paired it weirdly with 2 oracles, one being, I don't know why I did a trio like this, but I just did, and it worked fine. But this was my first time using the Chicoli Oracle.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this was fun to get to know, and essentially what I did was, I like that actually they don't have like keywords on it, because that opened it up for my personal interpretation, really encouraged me to focus on the imagery and my own thoughts. And that's what I would do is, I would kind of make my own interpretation and then read the guidebook to see what they have to say and kind of compare notes. And so that was like a good time. So yeah, this first time around, it was really just kind of getting the feel of the deck, and I liked it. I really actually enjoyed it. And then then I used another oracle, which was this one right here, the Inspirational Visions, which totally, clashes in vibe with the Chicoli. This is like very nostalgic, like storybook type of oracle. It's so you've got like a key key title and then like a phrase. So this one's like, Dogwood Fairy, take time to dream in the flowers. And sometimes, like, actually it was, well, first of all, I love the illustrations. That was like a key thing. I just love this very nostalgic illustration style. And it's like the messages would have me laughing a lot of times, but it's actually something that I really needed. In November, this was actually something that really kind of lifted my spirits in its kind of saccharine theme. So I appreciated it, and guidebook wasn't bad at all. Like it was, it was serviceable. So it's just more about like the vibe of it. And yeah, I felt like actually a lot of, from what I remember, because this was in November, so it was kind of a while ago, but I do recall like, oh yeah, no, some of the messages really do hit home, you know, several of them are applicable. In December, I actually did the Tarot Advent Challenge that was going around that Kelly Bear had created. And my focus with that was actually the Chicoli Tarot. So I worked a lot with Chicoli. And then I actually, and I guess I don't need to really show this because everyone's seen this, but it was the Chicoli Tarot, and I paired it. Really, the purpose was for the Tarot Advent was to learn the Chicoli, because this is my first time using this deck as well. So I would do a 3-card draw every day. And then actually I decided I wanted to pair an oracle with it for whatever reason, but that would just kind of be like its own thing. It didn't have to be married to the Tarot Advent, but they actually paired really well together, and that's the Woodland Warden's Oracle. So I used these together, and that was a good time too in getting to know the deck. So on any particular day, it would be a 3-card reading, or maybe it would inspire like a free write or some like poetry. And then January, I worked all month with just this deck, and it was a loaner from Sarah, as I've been hemming and hawing on these tarot decks, especially this one, and it is the Heartwood Tarot. And I really enjoyed this one too. It's got such a, I don't know, it's got such a chill mood to it, you know, and exploratory yet, you know, kind of chill. I don't know. That's kind of how I perceived it. And I just think that, of course, you know, we all love Adam Oler's work, and Stephanie Burrows did an excellent job with the conception of this deck and just the world building. So I had a wonderful time with this one.
I have talked about this deck already a couple times, so I will keep this brief, but I really pretty much spent the entire end of 2024, like literally October, November, and December, only working with the Bonefire Tarot. And I've talked about this already, but I fell in love with this deck. I love it. I don't know, something about it just hit exactly right for me at the time that I needed it. And so I never wanted to set it down. I just felt very like connected to it and sort of like tied in with it. And so, so I just kind of like didn't want to work with any other deck. I just wasn't, you know, and I was in a little bit of a slump for parts of those months as well. Like there were times when I like just wasn't doing a lot of tarot reading. And so I just never got to the point where I felt like I was ready to move on from this deck. So I just stuck with it for like 3 whole months. This is the only deck I was really using. So finally, after the first of the year in January, I decided I could like finally like move on from the Bonefire Tarot. And so this one I'll also just talk about briefly because Julie already talked about it. In January, I used this deck, which is the Cat Tarot, I guess is the name that's given in the Kickstarter. It's just Cat Tarot, but I did enjoy this deck a lot. You know, it just reads like an RWS clone. Like that's, you know, there's nothing aside from it just being cute artwork. It's a clone. But it was a good time, you know, I had no issues working with it. I just enjoyed it. I will say that the book that comes with this deck was a little bit of a disappointment because it isn't really a guidebook in any way. It's just a book of artwork.
It's like a coffee table book, right?
Yeah, it's literally just the artwork bigger with a couple of key words for each card, and like that's it. Like there's nothing.
Yeah, it is a bit disappointing.
So it was a little disappointing, but I will say that I also got the matching bag to go along with it, which was not disappointing and is actually extremely cute. So, so I do like this. But if you're going to buy this tarot deck, I recommend the bag, but the book you could probably skip.
You'd probably not bother. Yeah, unless you love the art so much that you want
a bigger
book.
with
Yeah.
bigger copies
exactly.
of it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's probably not worth it.
Exactly. It's not really a guidebook in any meaningful way.
No.
So with the cat tarot, I did actually work with an oracle as well, and that is this one, which is the Wisdom of the Wild Things Oracle, which Heather got for me for Christmas, and I love this deck. Like, I love it. It was just one of those ones where, you know, with the way Julie had talked about it, it intrigued me, and the artwork really intrigued me. And honestly, I really enjoy this deck a lot. I really enjoy the artwork and the just sort of overall feel of it, how it's it's cute, but in a slightly creepy, sort of offbeat kind of way. And I just, all of these little creatures, I love all of them. And it has really interesting messages, actually. They're stated in a very pithy way, but there's a lot of depth to what they evoke. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed this deck, to the point that this deck actually has persisted with me into February. I am using it this month as well with a different tarot. So I'll talk about that obviously in our next, monthly wrap up, but I've been really enjoying this oracle a lot. So yeah, that is the Wisdom of the Wild Things. So,
I need to get this oracle deck.
That makes me so happy.
like,
Yeah, right.
It's so adorable.
and an adorable.
Totally my vibe as well. I'm like, why don't I own this deck already? I don't know why.
I know, Heather. Come on.
It really
Totally
is.
up your alley. What the
I
heck?
know. It's such a me deck. I'm like,
It's
why?
very you.
What am I waiting for?
All right, next category is books. Heather, take it away.
I'm just going to talk about a couple. I've got one from December and two from January, I guess. So in December, I read an arc of Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, which is Grady Hendrix, which is his newest one. And this is about a home for wayward girls, like girls, unwed girls. They're not women, they're girls who fall pregnant, who are taken off to this home out in, I think it's Florida, if I remember rightly, somewhere in Florida. And when they're there, they're given a fake name, and they're all named after flowers and plants. And the idea is that they have the baby, they give the baby up, and they go home and they go back to their own name and their own life, and they just forget it ever happened. And while they're there, they have this mobile library come, and they go to the library to get some books. And there's a woman there, an old woman there, and she gives them a book about witchcraft, four of our main characters, and they start doing spells from this book, and these spells start to work, and they realize that for the first time in their lives, they've got like power in their hands. And then things start to go horribly wrong for them, as these things do. It wasn't my favorite Grady Hendrix, but I still had a phenomenal time with it. He does a really good job of knowing the story that he wants to tell and the themes that he wants to talk about, and then delivering them fantastically. Like, this book was about autonomy and about power, and he had like quotes in there from the little book, and there's all quotes like nobody is going to give you power. If you want power, you have to take it, and the people who have it aren't going to want to give it to you, and stuff. And it had some very long, like over a few pages, birthing scenes, which was a bit, well, if I hadn't already decided I was never having children, I'm certainly not now. His books always involve a certain element of body horror, and every time the body horror is always a shock. And I've read nearly all of his books at this point, and I'm still shocked by his body horror. I'm like, wait, what? Why? But I actually, having said that, I didn't think that they were overly gratuitous or unnecessary, bearing in mind he is a man writing about like teenage girls giving birth. I thought he handled it well. I didn't think it was overdone or gratuitous or done in an uncomfortable, like, there's always that worry that men are going to write it in some kind of underlying sexual context, and there was none of that. And I can see why he needed them as well for the themes that he had, because he had one that was in a hospital and was very clinical and very like drugged up, and she was just told what to do and where to go and blah blah blah. And then the other one took place in a little house and was a very different experience. And so I just had a really, really good time. Grady Hendrix' number one talent is writing from the perspective of females, particularly teenage females. Like, if you haven't read it, I read it quite a while ago, but I would recommend My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix as a place to start. That one, because that one is just, that man knows teenage girls and the way their minds work and the way their relationships work. And he just does it beautifully. He really does. The other one I read, I think, Sarah, you might actually have read this as well in January, if I remember rightly, on Goodreads, because it is another Grady Hendrix.
Yes.
And so I did read Horror Store, which was the book that Julie gave me for my birthday, I think it was. And this is his debut novel. And I do think that that is apparent when you read it. I do think it is noticeable that the writing, the skill in this one is not as strong as his later books. I still had a really good time with this book, but it's my least favorite Grady Hendrix so far. I thought it was fun. The whole concept is fun. So it's done like an IKEA catalogue. And it's this fake store called Orsk, which have set themselves up in America in competition with IKEA, and weird stuff keeps happening overnight. And so this group of employees stay overnight to investigate, and it just gets really strange from there on in. And it again, quite a bit of body horror. There was quite a bit of like, oh my God, I really could have gone the rest of my life without reading that sentence. But do you know what? And what I think I not disliked about this book, but I think what threw me about this book is it's set up in such a camp, funny, light-hearted style. And the first half of the book plays with that a little bit. And then the second half of the book is just all darkness, no campness, no fun, no black humor, nothing. It's just really dark and non-stop for the whole of the second half of the book. And I also think there will be a lot of people who will hate the ending of this book, will hate it. I liked it. I like it when horror films do this as well, where they don't really end. This book doesn't really end. And that's going to really piss a lot of people off.
I did also read that book in January, so I'm just going to also give my opinion on it right now, because I totally agree with you. And it was the first Grady Hendrix book that I read, but I also knew it was his first book. So I went in kind of expecting that it wasn't necessarily going to be his best book. And it definitely isn't, given what I've read of his stuff since then. So I think that the thing about that book for me is that, you know, the conceit of the whole thing is really fun. Like this whole idea that you're reading this IKEA catalog where the items get gradually more and more sinister, you know, as you go from chapter to chapter, and you're like, what is happening here? But, you know, the kind of thematic weight of it isn't there in comparison to some of his later books. I think, especially My Best Friend's Exorcism, like there was just, the conceit of that book had more thematic weight in terms of like what the book was trying to say about female friendships and about like what it was like growing up in the 80s and the satanic panic of the 80s and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Horror Store was sort of like, it was like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing with this whole like, work is like a prison, and, you know, big box stores are actually extremely creepy and like all that kind of stuff. Like, but it just didn't have the same kind of like emotional resonance that, you know, some of his later books have. So it was like fun, but not like fun, but it didn't make me feel very much, you know? So
yeah,
of my take on it, but like, it is hilarious as you're reading, like each chapter, there's like a new Orsk, you know, furniture item that it describes, and you're like, and they start
one of them's like a never-ending treadmill.
So yeah, but it's fun for sure.
And then the other book that I read in January was the Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark, which I audio read and had an absolutely phenomenal time with. It was a 5-star read for me. It was so good. So the tagline of this book, do either of you know this book? Like the tagline of this book is the dead cattail assassins are not cats and they don't have tails, but they are definitely dead. And It's this character called Aveen, who is before she died, she basically gave herself to this goddess, this assassin goddess, and when they die, they are reborn as assassins for this goddess at the age that they died. So they're not like they're brought back to life, and they're not zombies. They can eat and all of that kind of stuff. But they don't have any memories of their life before they died. So they don't know who they are or where they came from or what their real name is or anything. And she goes off to do this job. And when she turns up to do this job, there's something about the face of the person who she's supposed to kill that sparks memories for her that she's not supposed to have. And so she doesn't kill this target, but it's one of the 3 main rules of being an assassin is you always finish the job. So over the rest of the night, she has to deal with this. What do we do now? I haven't finished my job properly, and that's going to cause all these problems. Like because they're doing these jobs on behalf of an actual goddess. It's not like that my guild or my target, whoever paid me is going to come after me. It's like the goddess is going to come after me. I think it would have been really easy because books do it all the time, to have Aveen as cynical and doesn't trust anybody, and she hates her life and she tries to deal with everything herself, and it didn't do that at all. She had friends, she trusted her guild leader, it didn't always work out for her, but she was such a fun character. She was just so fun. The world was fun. It was just really nice writing style. I loved it. I don't have anything negative to say about this one at all.
So I'll just talk about 2 books that I felt were kind of highlights throughout the last couple months. The first one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I really enjoyed this one. It's about this young French woman in like the early 1700s. And essentially she like makes a deal with like a devil figure. And this leads to her having an immortal life. But of course, the downside to it is that she's also cursed with basically being forgotten. Anytime anyone meets her, they will then soon forget her. She'll never be remembered. And so you just see her journey throughout the centuries of having to navigate that. And then also then coming across somebody who does actually remember her. So it was just thoroughly enjoyable. I mean, it's a longer book, but pacing felt great. I love V.E. Schwab's narrative style. It just, and I liked how it ended. It was, I don't have really anything bad to say about it. I just really enjoyed it. And then the second book that I also thoroughly enjoyed is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. And this is a prequel to Legends and Lattes. And it's another cozy read, which is exactly what I needed. And so it's about this orc, so same protagonist as in Legends and Lattes, named Viv, and she becomes injured on the job. And so she's forced to kind of like lay back and recover in this town that she's unfamiliar with. And so throughout the book, you watch her as she makes new connections and new friendships, and then also is embroiled in like this battle with an antagonist who is a necromancer. So, but even with that, like it never felt too stressful. Like certainly it was like, I felt like the pacing was great. The tension was ramped up enough without it being, again, overwhelming or like past the point of a cozy read. It still to me remained very much like a cozy read. So I thoroughly enjoyed that as well. I think Travis Baldree is just great, especially with character building. You just become so bonded with these different characters. You just fall in love with them, and they're so creative. So I really enjoyed that one as well.
So I also read in December both Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust. And I also thoroughly enjoyed them. I also enjoyed Bookshops and Bone Dust a little bit more, which I think has to do, because one of the things about Legends and Lattes is that it also has very much of like a romance storyline in addition to the whole storyline about Viv setting up her coffee shop and, dealing with potential issues that encroach upon her ability to actually keep her business running. But there's very much a sort of like slightly romancy kind of like happily ever after kind of vibe to Legends and Lattes, whereas I feel like because Bookshops and Bone Dust takes place in is a prequel, and it takes place in a place where Viv is not going to stay. We already know she's not going to stay there because we know what happens to her later on. There's a little bit more of a sense of like melancholy to it, and there's a little bit more just like emotional ambiguity to it, I guess, which I appreciate in a book. Like I like that there's a little wistfulness to it that isn't necessarily present in Legends and Lattes, and I really like that. And also just some of the characters in Bookshops and Bone Dust, like Satchel was Satchel, oh my god, Satchel was like a heartbreaking character. It like there's I feel like Travis Baldree learned how to be a better writer from writing Legends and Lattes, and so Bookshops and Bone Dust is a little bit better. But I still both of them like thoroughly enjoyed both of them. They were just a fun read. I've also finished the Daevabad trilogy, which is so good. Like, you guys, it's so good. Oh my god. The one thing that I will say, the first two books are, well, if there's an issue that I have with the third book, it's just that the third book is really long, and it introduces things that I feel like maybe should have been introduced earlier in the story in order to like have the pacing across the entire trilogy be a little more consistent. Like the third book feels really overstuffed. There's just so much that happens in it that it's sort of like, I feel like some of that stuff should maybe have been introduced earlier, or the third book should have been like a third and fourth, or a third, fourth, and fifth book. Like it literally could have supported that many books in the series, because so much stuff happens in the third book. It's not like I would cut anything out. It's that for the sake of pacing, I might have made that third book more than one book. But on the whole, that series is so good. I highly recommend it. Basically, the series takes place across the entire, like what is in our world, the entire Muslim world, all the way from northern Africa all the way across South Asia into like Mongolia, and like those kinds of areas. And there's all of these different tribes of jinn who like are all sort of like regionally located in all of these different areas. And then in what would be Iran is a city called Daevabad, which is sort of like the capital city of this entire world of jinn creatures. And there's so much political intrigue between all of the different tribes. Like the city has at one point been taken over by the tribe that is not the same tribe that originally founded it. So there's intrigue around that, like people wanting to reconquer the city for the tribe that used to be in control of the city. There's political intrigue around people who are like half jinn, half human. And, like different tribes feel different ways about those people. And like, there's so much to it. Like it is just, the world building is phenomenal and interesting. In addition to these different tribes of jinn, beyond just jinn, there are all these other like elemental, like races, I guess, from Islamic mythology. So the jinn are like the race that represents fire, but there's also the Marid who represent water, and the Peri who represent air. And like like there's just so much that goes on in it. But if you really want to sink your teeth into a trilogy that's just going to like absorb your entire brain for a couple of months, it is really good. The other one I think that is quite a highlight for me was Voyage of the Damned by Frances White, which is one that which is one that Heather recommended, which is a murder mystery that takes place on a ship where there are all of these scions of different kingdoms, that are all sort of like part of one larger kingdom, and each of them has like a magical power called a blessing that is not necessarily known what that magical power is by the other people who are on the ship. And then there's murders that take place, and like it's so good. The main character and the voice of the main character is just super delightful, and it's a really fun read. It's one of those ones where like the world building is not super realistic in any way. Like it doesn't, it's clearly set up as like a chess game almost. It doesn't feel like a very realistically built world, but it's it creates a puzzle box for you to actually like, view these murder mysteries through the lens of, and it's just really, really good. So I thoroughly enjoyed that one too. I read a bunch of other stuff, but those are the ones that I would really say are highlights. Definitely.
We are on to the category of TV and films. Heather, what have you been watching?
I haven't really done any TV for months and months and months. I don't really have the focus for TV at the moment, so I'm rewatching Criminal Minds for like the 4th time because I know what happens, and I also know which episodes I don't like. So when they start, I'm like, no, next episode. Skip that one and don't enjoy that one. But so that's all I'm really doing TV wise. But I did watch a couple of films in November and December. So in November, I watched Silent Night on Netflix, and this is like Die Hard if Bruce Willis was Santa. It's David Harbour, and he is Father Christmas, and he is like really jaded and angry, and he's an alcoholic, and he goes to this house to drop off presents, and the people there are being held hostage for money, and the girl manages to contact him on one of the only children in the house manages to contact him on a 2-way radio, and so he basically fights off the bad guys to save the family. It was really good fun. Like if you like action movies, like stupid action movies, it was really good fun. I had such a great time. And then in December, I went to the pictures for the first time in forever to see Wicked. So I went to, we have a new cinema opened near me, and they have an IMAX screen, which I've never done before. So me and my friend took us out for a treat one weekday to see Wicked, and I had a phenomenal time. In fact, when we came out of the cinema, I was like, I think I might at some point have to go and see that again because I loved it so much. Mm-hmm. It was, I do think there were moments where I was like, the pacing was a bit off, and I was like, okay, I'm a little bit bored now, and I need us to start doing the next thing already. But overall, I had a fantastic time. I sobbed like a child, obviously, because that is who I am as a person. And I there were moments throughout it as well. Like I've read the book. I have actually read the book. So I understand the story, and I knew it was about oppression and all of that kind of stuff, and and what was happening to the animals in Oz. But there were moments in the book, in the film, where I actually had, because I'm so fucking soft, says the woman who binges on horror, but there were moments where I was like, I don't know if I can watch this. I'm finding this really hard to sit through and really uncomfortable, and I just don't know if I can do it. Obviously I did, and I think it's a brilliant story. I'm so excited for the second one. Counting it down on my calendar.
I'll interrupt you here to say that I also did watch Wicked and also thoroughly enjoyed it. And I agree, sometimes pacing felt a little bit off, where I was starting to be like, okay, we need to ramp this up a little bit. But overall, I really did enjoy it. And, I have no prior experience with Wicked other than an attempt years ago to read the novel, and I could just never get into it for whatever reason. And really no experience with the Broadway musical other than the song Popular.
I would be interested now to go and see, because it runs in London all year round, and I would be interested to go and see it in the West End, because I'm like, what did they add to the film that made the runtime of the film longer, of act one of the film longer than the entire musical?
Exactly, because I didn't know there was a part 2.
Oh, did you
When I
not?
went to see the movie, I was like,
Oh,
and I'm like,
wait, what?
other than Wicked, I did watch, let me see, yeah, two movies. Um, I I watched finally Practical Magic because Sarah was like, Julie, it's free on YouTube.
Yes.
I never watched, so I finally did, and it was fun. It was fun. I have oh my, like Aiden Quinn, like he's nostalgic for me. I super nostalgic. So it was a good time. Just in general, yeah, good time. And then I also watched Gladiator 2, which I really enjoyed more than I thought I would. I didn't go in with too high of expectations, and I thought it was entertaining. I didn't feel at all bored or anything like that. I felt like the pacing was pretty good. I mean, certainly there are moments where you have to suspend disbelief. Have to. The things that they throw in that arena for the gladiators to fight, just yeah. So if you haven't seen it and you go see it, you just have to you have to suspend disbelief. But it was fun. And then in January, I did watch the second season of Squid Game. And luckily somebody warned me that it was like a part one.
Mhm.
And because I did not know that.
No, I didn't know that either until just now. So
Oh, okay, yeah. Because they were like, prepare.
thank you for that. No, that did not sound sincere, but that was sincere. Thank you. Thank you for the warning.
Yes. Because apparently people had not known this when it first came out and they started watching, and it does leave you very frustrated because it's a cliffhanger. And then it came to light, like, oh no, there's part two.
Oh, I hate cliffhangers
Like,
though.
oh, thank God, because like, how could it possibly end the way it ended, kind of thing. So that made it easier for me to, and I debated, like, do I wait until part two comes out and then binge watch it all, or do I, go ahead and watch this part and know that there will be more episodes later? And I decided to go ahead and watch it. And yeah, it's entertaining. Having experience with the first season, you kind of know like some of it feels a little bit predictable.
TV wise, I am kind of in the same mode lately, or I spent all of January really in the same mode of only wanting to watch things that I'd watched before. So I was like rewatching seasons of The Great British Bake Off, even though I like know who wins and everything. I was just like watching Bake Off because it's soothing, movie wise, and actually the other thing that I did watch TV wise is I finished Interview with the Vampire, the first season, which is on Netflix, which is really good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm very excited for the second season to be posted because I really want to continue that. Movie wise, again, other than Wicked, which I went to see with my family over the holidays, I also forced my family to watch Paddington, which they all loved, and so then we also watched Paddington 2, which is, if anything, even more delightful than the first one. It's so delightful. I highly recommend the Paddington movies. They're so good. I love them.
Cozy, you would say? Cozy?
So cozy.
Okay.
So cozy. In the second movie, Paddington goes to jail and it's still cozy. Like it's all just marmalade and coziness. Like it's just, they're so wonderful and charming and delightful. So yes, I absolutely recommend the Paddington movies like so highly. And so my family really enjoyed both of those movies. And then the other movie that we watched over Christmas is The Wild Robot, which is an animated movie.
Is it based on a book?
It was, yes, it was a book. Yeah. And it's a wonderful movie. It's basically a movie about this robot who basically is in a shipwreck and washes up on shore of this island where there's just animals, there's no people who live there. And the robot is programmed to be a helper robot. And so it tries to find a purpose on this island full of animals, and it eventually adopts an orphaned gosling. And so it's just, and it's a really, really sweet movie. And it's surprisingly, I guess, sort of like clear-eyed about, what the natural world is actually like, and like, that there isn't always a happy ending always, in the natural world, and that there has become this big disconnect between the world of humans and the natural world in this future where this robot exists. It was really good. It's a really sweet, lovely movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I cried at the end. Like it's a really nice movie. So yeah, if you get a chance to watch The Wild Robot, it's very enjoyable.
Now our final category is our wild card, which is just general updates and any random thing that we want to share. So Heather?
Obviously, December is one of those months where you're doing lots of socializing and going out for meals and going to people's houses to do gift drop-off and exchanges and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of that in the second half of December. And then January, I tend to get a bit hermity anyway, because December is so sociable. I went for a work weekend at the beginning of January, which during the day was a conference, which was not much fun. But in the evening, we had a party, so that was good. I went to an actual party. I haven't been to a party with a disco and a dance floor for ages. I had a great time. And then I got sick, which was not so much fun.
Admittedly, the last few months for me weren't like great. So I just kind of mentally, so I was trying to find ways to like play, have fun, distract myself. So I decided in November to get started on this thing, this Wooble thing that I've been saying that I needed to get started on, Felix the Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And I did manage to finish him.
Yay!
So,
he's so cute.
He's cute.
He's so adorable.
He's all right.
Yeah,
he looks better than Emilio the turtle. So yeah, it's all right. It's tension continues to be a thing.
It takes so long to figure out tension. It's a hard thing to get right. And did you try going down a hook?
I did, and I do think that helped. But it always starts off like, when they start the magic circle for you. And I always feel like that's where the tension is off. Because
to be honest, the one that you sent me, I ended up undoing the magic circle and doing it again because I couldn't get it tight enough. Yeah. And so I ended up just redoing it.
Mm-hmm. And I have since with this learned, I did learn to do the magic circle with Emilio and then with this one as well. And if I could go back, I maybe would have tried to undo this and redo it, but it's all right. It's done. Thank God it's done. I think I've decided that amigurumi is maybe
not your thing,
not for me. And just in general, I think crocheting, it's definitely hard that this hand is pretty much like staying still and providing tension. Whereas I feel like I want to move it and have both hands be active at the same time. But
so maybe knitting is more for you.
Maybe, I don't know. So that was always a challenge where I felt like this hand was just constantly fidgeting to do more than just provide tension. And then therefore I wasn't providing great tension like a lot of the time. So, but it's done. And then the other thing that I made was my latest custom doll. So I've named her Viola. So I customized, I forget when I customized her. It might have been November, December. So she still has her humbook on from the Lunar New Year. So yeah, I had a good time with her. She was supposed to be kind of like a mini me, but there was just no way that was going to happen. Like, given that, like, I would have had to buy a completely different wig. I just didn't feel like spending money, so I just kind of worked with what I had. And so I've called her like mini, not me, but like what I did with her eyelids and like her eye chips. And I gave her actually like a first time trying like a neck joint, so she has more range of motion. But so these are the different eye chips. I don't know how well you can see, but like just different shades of purple. So I had a really good time with her. Yeah,
she's lovely.
Thank you. I did give her the mold. But still doesn't still doesn't look like me. That's all right though. But yeah, she was a good time, and just decorating the pulley strings. And I think that this is the last one where I will do any face carving, because I really just don't enjoy face carving.
Yeah.
So it just, because at the end of it, it doesn't really look like I did any face carving. That's, that's the problem. So just all that work for not that much difference. So I think with the next customs I do, I will just focus on like painting and shading and things like that. So
November, not a lot happened because I had surgery on October 31st. And so I spent like the entirety of November, like not doing anything and recovering from surgery. January was very similar. It was extremely hermity. And I got very sick during January. So like, again, not a lot happened. December though, I obviously went to Colorado for Christmas, which I do every year. And this year we went kind of early because my sister had gotten tickets for us to see the Nutcracker like on the 17th, I think. So we were there by like the 15th. I was in Colorado for like 2.5 weeks, which was really, really fun. And we had a wonderful time. But the coolest thing that I did while I was in Colorado, if anybody watching this is ever in Denver, you must go to Meow Wolf, which is so it's called Meow Wolf, like literally as in meow the cat, wolf, which is this huge building, like a 5-story building, massive building, which is basically just a giant interactive art installation that makes you feel like you're living in 5 different sci-fi novels.
Ooh.
It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my entire life. Like there's a floor that's basically just an entire like sort of cyberpunk like themed sort of town center where you can go into all the shops and like everything's art. There's just like hundreds of artists worked on this thing, and there's just everywhere you look is something to look at. And like you can buy these little cards where you can tap the cards on different things. It's only a couple bucks for the card, but you can like tap the cards on different things to activate certain, to like make the robot taking tickets at the movie theater talk to you, or and you can also use the cards to collect clues, because there's this sort of like almost escape room like mystery that you can solve as you collect clues going through this whole thing. There's a room or a floor that's basically like a gigantic like sci-fi fantasy like forest world with all of these different like statues of different weird animals, and like there's little rooms hidden everywhere where you go in and there's different stuff inside all over the place. I mean, honest to God, it's like one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life. I could have spent a week in that place. Every inch of it is something interesting to look at or to listen to or to see. I mean, it just is one of the most mind-boggling things I've ever seen. So like look up Meow Wolf. If you are in Denver, go to it. Genuinely, it's one of the coolest. Oh, there's a room on the first floor called the Perplexiplex, which is basically like there's all of these different like light projections on the walls and on the floor, but they interact with you as you move around. So like as you walk across the floor, it might like make like light puddles, like splashes, what looks like splashes of water as you walk around, or you can like wave your arm across the wall to make like flowers bloom and stuff like that. Like it's so crazy. Like it is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Go to Meow Wolf. And that's the one in Denver, which I understand is the biggest one. There are different ones there's like one I think in New Mexico and one in they're mostly in like the Southwest, but the biggest one is the one in Denver, and it's just so cool. Anyway, so yeah, that was like my total highlight of the last 3 months is Meow Wolf.
So that is a wrap for this 3 girls catch up. Thanks for watching, and our next live will be on Sarah's channel, and that will be on March 1st, same time. So hopefully we'll be able to all hang out then. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.